Because what I find interesting also is people who are not au fait with how budgets work, they have this thing called the forward estimates, which is they spread the money over the next 4 years. And so they project into the future what they're going to be spending money on. And a lot of the initiatives that they've done for this lady budget, all the funding drops off a cliff in the 5th year. So it looks well funded for the 4 years of the forward estimates, but I think the domestic violence stuff drops down to $2 million in the 5th year. And so one of the economists from the Australian Institute was saying either they're going to fix gender equality and family violence in 4 years, or they're not taking this seriously. This is a box ticking exercise to,
I'll go with option B, Elana.
So a lot of this budget seems to be a scraping the political barnacles off the the ship of state, so to speak. And it is, yeah. And one of the interesting things about budget gets all the economics nerds really excited is that the government can't hide in a budget. It's all there in black and white. And the budget reveals in black and white what their priorities are. So one of the things that the Australian Institute picked up in their analysis was the Office for Women, whose purpose is to put a gender lens on basically every portfolio in the government, is having its funding cut by half over the next 4 years. That shows you how seriously the government is taking women's issues and women's everything.
Let's dive into that just a little bit, because this, as you described it, this was coined as the lady budget or the women's budget. There was an 84-page women's supplement to the budget papers that highlighted all of the things that have been done for women in this budget. What's actually in there for women? Take a moment, think about that one.
Well, if you take the childcare out, that's a family problem. That's not a women's problem.
Yes. Just on the childcare subsidy doesn't start for another year.
Yes.
So, we'll just wait a year because it won't matter now. It will be right for the next year. We'll be up with it so far. So, they'll be right to hold off while we invest in other women's issues as well. Women's issues.
Such as, yes. That was over half the funding. Women received $3.4 billion in funding in this budget, the initiatives that were specifically targeting women. Those included childcare, which is ostensibly a social issue or an educational issue. It's not a women's issue because men have kids as well, believe it or not. Speaking as a man and as one who has children, I can testify to that fact. Yeah. There was funding in there for domestic violence, and again, most domestic violence is actually perpetrated by men. So if you're going to talk about it as an issue at all, it's a male problem, not a women problem. And without being glib about it, there was useful funding in there for women to escape domestic violence, but nothing in there to actually stop it.
Yes, that was an incredibly good initiative too, because they went from deciding that women could raid they're already lower than the male average super fund,
which is ridiculous.
To escape. Which A was, as you said, ridiculous. B, a lot of women don't have much money in their super fund, so their ability to raid the super fund to get enough money to escape is probably questionable. But that's also right. It opened them up to the possibility of coercive control and their abusive partner forcing them to raid their super fund to give the money to him. So thankfully they knocked that on the head, and they've done a complete 180 and gone, actually, no, the government will hand you escape money, which from a coalition government, which has a widely documented women problem, is actually really astonishingly good policy. But as you said, they're doing nothing to actually address the root cause of domestic violence, which is toxic masculinity and male violence.
Well, out of it, admittedly, there is $90 million of it that is going to be spent on the prevention and education of what that actually looks like. So it's about support programs and the prevention there and actually creating something that's a bit more informative on a community-based level. But I don't know what that actually looks like. Chances are it's going to be another television campaign after another.
Maybe we can pay some NRL stars to talk at us.
Well, that's it, and bring up the same rhetoric of, it's just a boy, that's what boys do. And chances are that's probably what the $90 million will be spent on, in actually education and informing people about respectful relationships.
But there are roughly 12 million men in Australia. That's about $7.50 per male to be spent on domestic violence prevention. Doesn't feel like enough.
No. The section that was being spent on women's health worked out, I think, to be about $3.80 per woman per year, which although like funding
Like-
research and stuff into endometriosis is an incredibly, again, great policy, well overdue. But if this is what the Liberals think is a lady budget, I'm really underwhelmed as a lady.
Yeah. Even perhaps like it doesn't buy you a packet of sanitary products. Genuinely, if the government wants to invest in something, you may as well just send a box of You by Kotex, not unsponsored, but to every woman's door, and it actually would probably work out that they gave you a little bit more.
Yeah.
And that's the irony of it.
Yeah, it's a bit sad. And again, if you look at, the priorities and what they're actually spending on, all of these measures in the budget are temporary. They all cut out after the forward estimates. So after 4 years, all this funding disappears. However, I think it's $140 billion that they're spending on the stage 3 tax cuts for high income individuals. They're permanent.
That's permanent.